Hi class, we are now on to our final project, and this week's project is the cityscape with the sunset background. So for this activity you will need the sunset watercolor background that you created. You'll need black construction paper, and I have several pieces because if you notice in this one right here, I ended up using two different sheets because one sheet wasn't big enough because I was using the scrap pieces so that I wasn't wasting paper. You'll also need scissors, a pencil, a ruler, and an X-Acto knife if you're allowed to use them, and a cutting board. I have this really nice quilter's cutting board, but you could also use one of those like kitchen cutting boards. They have them at, I'm pretty sure you can pick one up at the Dollar Tree. So don't worry about the quality of it. It just makes it easier. You could also do this on like a cardboard box if you need to. It's just if you're going to use the X-Acto knife, you're going to need something underneath it so you're not cutting your tabletop, okay? And so we will get started. The first thing we're going to do is make our buildings. We're going to draw them first. So on my black construction paper, I am going to see if these two pieces are going to fit in here first. Yep, those will work. Okay. So you might want to lay them on there so you make sure you get enough. So for this, I am going to turn it over and trim this piece of paper so that it fits into my background. And I'll just cut off this extra little piece right here. Oops. And the piece that I am actually cutting, that could actually be one whole building if you wanted it to be. So now when I flip it back over and I lay this here, and it may not be perfect because I didn't cut very straight, but you know, you get the idea of how it lines up. So that's how I pieced my two pieces together. So you can see that I adjusted my camera so I had more of my picture in the screen. So since you can see better, now we'll get started drawing our building. I'm going to move my watercolor background to the side because we don't need that right now. And now we have these two pieces of construction paper. I'm going to trim this just a little because it's not quite straight. And you can do that if you want to try, you know, so that it actually is more square. You can take your ruler and actually draw a straight line so that they fit together better if you want. See, that works better. Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to start drawing buildings on my paper. And I'm going to use my ruler to help make my lines straight. So I'm going to start over here, and this first building, if you look, this paper is almost the same size. Well, I don't want my building to be quite that tall. This first building could be almost that tall, so I could put the top of it here. So I'm going to line my ruler up with the edge of my paper so that it's a straighter line. So for this one, you know, before we were doing where we lined the zero up, now I'm going to line the straight edge of the side of my ruler up to the straight edge of my piece of paper. And I marked on my watercolor. That's okay. All right. And you can make your buildings, you know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide. That's up to you. I'm going to make this one 1.5 inches. Or maybe that would actually be 2 inches. So this one's going to be 2 inches. So you're going to draw your line across the top, and it's going to be hard to see with pencil on black paper, so you might have to draw it dark. Line my ruler up on this side so I can draw the side of my building. Now I'm going to make my next building a little bit shorter. So you're creating your own skyline. You can do tall buildings, short buildings. I mean, you want some of them to be fully into the sky, and some of them can be a little shorter. So see, I have some that go almost to the top of my paper, and then there's a few that come lower down. And you can do as many as you want. You can do, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on that one. But depending on how big you're making them, you may only end up with 6. And that's okay too. So make a short one right here. And that's going to be the end of that building. So on this piece of paper, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings. And on this one, I think I'm going to draw this one a little bit onto this other piece so that it goes onto both pieces, but you don't have to do that. It's just this is how mine ended up being. And if you do, it's gonna, you're gonna have to make sure that it lines up with your windows and stuff, but it's not that hard to do. So line my 2 edges up, so I'm connecting those 2 lines that go across, making sure my paper's all the way against each other. Oops. Putting my ruler on that line. And then I'm going to draw down. And now, oh, I got to go up too. Got to make the top of the other building, or the side of the other building all the way. Make it just a little bit taller than that one. And then I'm just going to draw it across to the end of my paper. All right, so now I have 6 buildings for my skyline. Now I'm just going to cut out the top part. So I'm going to cut the top with my scissors. Just cut the top of those buildings. Now I have my buildings cut out. Now I'm going to add the windows. And if you notice in this one, I added different shapes and sizes of windows. And some buildings have 1, some buildings have 2. So this is where you just get to be creative and add the shapes and sizes of buildings that or windows in your buildings that you would like. But I used my ruler. And so if I want to put 2 windows in this one, I lined my ruler up where it was straight, and then I went like, okay, so here's a window, to make it 1/2 inch, and skipped a space and put 1/2 inch window, and then skipped a little space and put a 1/2 inch window, and I did that all the way down the building. And you could put a door in here if you want, or you could put another window. That's up to you. So then I moved my ruler over a little bit more. To do the other part of the window. And I just did it exactly the same way, where my 2 lines lined up. Oops, and add another one down there. And then I just connect those 2 lines. And if you want, you can go ahead and add your other tops of your other windows in. Just try to keep your ruler, straight. So there, I've drawn my windows with a ruler. But on this one, I'm not going to. On this building, I'm just going to make windows. These are going to have skinny windows. So I'm just going to draw them without using the ruler. And that's okay. If that's what you want to do, that's perfectly fine. The ruler can kind of get in the way sometimes. Sometimes if you just really want them to be nice and straight, then use the ruler. Again, this is your project. It's your artwork. And you get to make it what you want it to be. So I am just here to show you how and give you guidance on how to complete the project. But you get to add your own take on the picture, on your art, on the project as well. I was just making those a little longer so they were more consistent. So maybe I do want to add some doors. So I'm just going to add some doors on this one. And then you'll just cut that shape out too. So just go ahead and continue to put your windows in all of your buildings. And if you've connected one like this, then like for mine on this one, I probably just put one big square window in here so that I'm not having to draw on both of these and cut out pieces of both. So I'll just probably put a big square window on the bigger part. But again, that's up to you. You figure out how you want to solve the windows in the problem of windows in this one if you have a building that's like mine, okay? So put all your windows in there and then I will show you and we'll walk through cutting out the windows, okay? So you can see that I have all of my windows drawn in my buildings. Now it's time to cut them out. I'm going to show you with scissors first, okay? So if you have scissors and you're cutting them out, you want to be careful not to cut the building itself and just the windows out. So I would do this on this one. I just cut straight in to my line. So I cut right to the window. And then put your scissors in, you know, rotate them and just trim out that window. Don't trim out any of the other paper. And if you have to come back over here and go down this way so you're not tearing the paper. Now you have that window out. When you glue it down onto your paper, you just glue that together. And that will keep it from looking like there's a line there, okay? And for windows like this, I would come in from this side because if you go straight down the middle, you're going to end up cutting your paper in half. For windows that are like this, you'll have to come in. So I would trim out one window. Oops. And it's going to get a little hard with scissors, but I know that some of you may not be allowed to use X-Acto knives, so you're going to have to do the best that you can with your scissors. Oh, and yeah, because see, you don't want to rip the... And I would do one window at a time. Oops. So if you want to, you could get a little tape and tape that back together before you keep going so it doesn't tear. I would go with this one, I would go straight over and do the same thing with this. And be careful not to cut the top off. Okay, so that's that. And then you could take a little tape, like I said, and just tape those two in. But when you glue it down, you're not even going to notice that those have been trimmed. So just slowly, you know, make your way down. I would only go down, I would come down like right here and not across there. I would do there, go across to that one, cut down, and then go across to that, cut down. And don't cut the bottom part so that when you glue, it connects back and you're not losing any of your paper, okay? So you guys with scissors, just take it slow, work carefully, trying not to make, you know, so you're not separating your paper completely. And if you do, you can always line it up on your background and then glue the pieces together. And it's not going to look, I mean, it won't look bad. It'll just be different, okay? If you have your X-Acto knife, you're going to have your mat, whatever cutting board you have, and you're just going to carefully trim out all of your windows. And you're just going to go through and trim every single window, and then we'll start gluing down. Now I have finished cutting out my windows. So if you notice, I have taken away my cutting board because I don't want to get glue on the cutting board, okay? So now I have my buildings with all of their windows, and I'm going to just glue them into place. So you'll just take your glue stick, whatever, and don't put a lot on there because a little goes a long way with glue, and just, you know, glue it down. So you see, I put very little glue on the back of mine. You really don't need more than that. You can always go back underneath and add a little if you need to. So I'm going to pick that up and pull my background down and just line it up in the corner and press it down. And right here is where I cut with the scissors. So you just connect those and press it all down, and then you'll barely notice that you even cut through with the scissors. And then I got to do my last piece. And this one I'm making sure I line the top of my building up and pressing it down. And it went a little over. See, and you can just go back and trim that off if you don't like it, or you can just leave it like that. No big deal. And there is your cityscape silhouette collage with your watercolor background.